Hello, and welcome to the JW Thoughts Studio. My name is Wally, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. And I am going to tell you my story of leaving the Jehovah's Witness organization. So, if I go back and, put on my old witness cap and really think about it, trying to pinpoint the very first time you have that doubt that, everything isn't what it seems is a little bit hard. But for me, as far as I'm aware, one of those first doubts came when I was out preaching and we took a coffee break. And we were at Starbucks and everyone was taking a little bit too long. And me being the overzealous pioneer that I was like, well, I need to keep my time going. So I'm going to go and try and place a magazine with somebody. And so I walked up to somebody and they let me give them, my little spiel. And afterward, they're like, I really appreciate it, but I actually grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. Which, I was like, oh, okay, well, no problem. So we got to talking. We knew a lot of the same different people because he had grown up in the area. And I had just asked him, very bluntly, well, what's keeping you from coming back to Jehovah? And he said, well, there's a lot of different things and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Didn't really, give like a solid answer or anything. And I had said, I wouldn't mind if this isn't the right time for you. Obviously I'm just like walked up to you in a parking lot at Starbucks. So clearly, it's not a convenient time. But, if you'd like to talk more or have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And he said, well, I do have like, one thing that kind of bothers me, and that's Beth Serene. I was like, Beth Serene? What the hell's Beth Serene? What are you talking about? And he's like, well, do you not know anything about that? I'm like, I apologize. I didn't know anything about it. He's like, well, here's my phone number. Look it up and then give me a call and we can talk more. So I was like, oh, okay. And so I got home, I looked at Beth Serene, I went to the JV book, that's like the old Watchtower history publication. I think it was from like the 1990s somewhere. It's the one that I grew up with. And I looked at Beth Serene and it just had a few like little brief things to say about how, Rutherford had built this house in San Diego, and that was kind of it. So I just did a quick Google search because I was like, well, what is this guy on about? So I did a Google search and all the apostate websites came up and I was like, oh, red alarm, bad times. So after that, I was in a position where, someone was essentially asking, hey, I need some spiritual help. There's this thing that stumbled me. And, here it is, do research and give me a call. I didn't call him back. It would have been, technically speaking, my responsibility to call that person back to make sure that, the flock was taken care of or whatever. But I didn't call him back because when I looked it up just in a random Google search, I got, apostate websites. And to me, that was enough to say, oh, well, this guy must just be an apostate and I can dismiss him, outright. So that was one of the things that I think planted, even if it didn't plant a seed, it opened up, another layer of vision. That way I could see things a little bit more clearly. So then another one, moving forward a little bit, was when I had a Bible study with someone that said he was an atheist. Now, this was not someone that, was like an atheist because they had good reasons to be an atheist. This was someone that was just like, well, I don't believe. And that's it. So we never really got into any like sort of arguments or discussions or debates about, if God exists or, why I believe God existed and why. It was more like, well, I just don't believe God exists. So he agreed to a Bible study, and we went through the Bible Teach book. We went through the first chapter, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, got into the second chapter, and then it came to the part on prophecy. So, interestingly enough, this is someone that was actually studying history at the time. So, when we got to that point, I think it talks about Nebuchadnezzar and wow, I'm really having to stretch my brain here, but basically it talked about Nebuchadnezzar and the fall of Babylon and all that. He had mentioned, actually, you know what? Just for facts' sake, let me pull up the old Watchtower library. Let's do this properly. So the more interesting part was, regarding Babylon, it was foretold she will never be inhabited, nor will she be a place to reside in throughout all generations. No Arab shall pitch his tent there, no shepherds will rest their flocks there. This prophecy did more than predict a city's fall. It showed Babylon would be desolated permanently. You can see evidence of the fulfillment of these words. The uninhabited site of ancient Babylon, about 50 miles south of Baghdad, Iraq, is proof that Jehovah spoke through Isaiah, that what Jehovah spoke through Isaiah has been fulfilled. I will sweep her with the broom of annihilation. Now, when we covered this a section of the Bible Teach book, he immediately said, well, that's just not like how it went. When Cyrus overthrew Babylon, it still remained a center of society for hundreds of years. And I was like, well, what do you mean? It says right here, because the Bible said that, they would conquer and that it would, be, what did it say? She will never be inhabited, nor will she be a place to reside in throughout all generations. I'm like, well, that's what it says. They're like, okay, well, that might be true now, but at the time, it's still, after Cyrus took over, it still remained a very important city for hundreds of years. It wasn't, I think, maybe nearly 1,000 years, if I'm remembering my history correctly, but let's just call it for hundreds of years, it remained a very important world city. And I was like, okay, well, maybe the Bible still named the commander, and it still got all the details right, but I kind of see where you're coming from with respect to, this total desolation. He's like, oh, okay. So we made plans for the next week. I would return and then I would talk about, more Bible prophecies, because that would be very compelling evidence to suggest that I should take the Bible seriously. So I came back the next week and I wanted to tell him about a prophecy in Ezekiel having to do again with Nebuchadnezzar and the city of Tyre. Now, I chose this one because it was a specific ruler in a specific place, and it gave details about what would happen. And I thought, okay, well, this is, this one's going to be exactly what he's looking for. So I, read the scriptures in Ezekiel, and again, this was someone that was studying history. He flat out called me out and said, I'm sorry, bud, but this did not happen. Nebuchadnezzar did not overthrow the city of Tyre. He tried for 13 years and he failed. I don't know what else to tell you, but it's well recorded. And it kind of blew me away. So we ended the conversation basically me saying, well, I guess I need to do a little bit more research and I'll get back to you. So I went and I looked at the insight books. And in one of the insight books, it says that, Nebuchadnezzar was commissioned by Jehovah and to overthrow the city of Tyre, and he fulfilled that. And it said right there, oh yeah, he tried, even though it was hard, he persevered for 13 years and he eventually succeeded. And then later on in the insight book, it mentions, well, he didn't actually receive any benefits from it. He didn't actually, gain anything from that siege. And so Jehovah gave him Egypt as like sort of a compensation for doing his bidding. And when I read that, I couldn't make sense of it. I thought, well, the prophecy was specific, and yet Nebuchadnezzar failed. And then when I looked in one of my history books, it confirmed that he just failed. So it kind of blew me away a little bit. And needless to say, again, I ended the Bible study there. I didn't keep it going because, well, for obvious reasons, I was scared for my faith. And I didn't want to be challenged in such a way that it would shake my faith to where I might lose it. Which, obviously, why even have faith if you can't challenge it, right? Anyway. So that was another one of the big things that really happened early on that made me start asking these hard questions about, well, what is it that I do believe? So moving forward a little bit, the next sort of evolution that my faith kind of took came a little bit later on in life, and that was after I had gotten married. Now, this is actually kind of important, so I guess I'll talk about it. One of the big things when you're growing up as a Jehovah's Witness is sexual repression. And once that sexual repression kind of like dissipates, vis-a-vis, you get married and you can have sex finally, it kind of opens up your mind a little bit. And I don't mean to be crass when I say that, but I do believe that it is quite true. So after I had gotten married, my wife ended up breaking her leg in 2 places a week after our honeymoon. And because of that, it really kind of shook me a lot. And it just gave me a lot of like extra responsibilities. And now I was like a caretaker because she was in a wheelchair for a bit and, couldn't get around and all this other stuff. And it made me want to increase my faith more. So if you grow up as a witness and anything bad happens to you, the default response is, just be more faithful, be more exuberant, be more dedicated to the organization, to being a more spiritual person, and then everything will be fine. So because of that upbringing, that's exactly what I did. And when I did, I had this commitment to, really understanding the Bible, really getting into it. And it was at that same time, and if you've seen any of my videos, or more specifically, if you've seen the intro to this channel, I was giving a talk at the end of the last part of a meeting, and they were singing the song of Listen, Obey, and Be Blessed. And when I looked up just from my, tablet, just for a second to see, just looking out at the audience, I saw these blank faces, that were singing the Listen, Obey, and Be Blessed. I had this weird epiphany because, earlier in that week I had, made this determination. Okay, I'm going to understand the Bible. I'm going to understand all of, the watchtower's teachings. I'm going to be the very best Jehovah's Witness that I possibly can be. And I'm a little bit of a manic person. So when I set my brain to kind of like the on position, I go really hard. And it melded perfectly with this period, or not this period, this moment where I looked up over my tablet and I saw all the singing faces. And I just thought, what the fuck? Like, what the flying fuck is going on here? And I went home that night, and after my wife had gone to bed, I grabbed a piece of paper, a notebook, and I got open the Bible, and I started reading. And it was the first time that I had read the Bible honestly. And for fear that this video is going to be a little bit too long, I guess we're going to have to do a little cliffhanger action and stop right there. So that is part 1 of my story of leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. And stay tuned for part 2. I reckon that, let's see what is today. Today is Tuesday. I'll probably have it up Tuesday evening or maybe Wednesday afternoon. So I'm going to release the second part on Saturday morning. Let's just call that. So Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll be releasing part 2 of my story. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the weekend.